Hi, I'm David Fountain and I'm just an ex-teacher. I am not a financial advisor, so I cannot tell you if this retrospective additional pension is a good deal compared to other financial products or not. For that, you'll need to talk to a proper financial advisor. They may not be aware that this is available to you, but they should be aware of the whole concept of defined benefit schemes. So they will be able to compare this to other products for you. What I can tell you and show you is how much it costs and compare it to the current option of buying additional pension in the career average scheme. Little spoiler alert, it is a lot cheaper to buy retrospective. So here we go. Firstly, I'm afraid it's not available to everyone. You have to be one of those who has transitional protection. That is, you were in the teacher's pension scheme before March 2012 and were affected by the transition from that final salary scheme to the career average one that started in 2015. This was the original plan. Everyone was going to be moved from the final salary scheme to the career average one on the 1st of April 2015. Teachers objected, we went on strike, and as a result the government made a little compromise. Not everyone was to be moved in 2015. Depending on your date of birth, it could be 2016, or indeed it could be any date right the way up until April 2022. However, this was illegal, and as such, it has got to be put right. The 7 years from 2015 to 2022 are now known as the remedy period, and it's this period that can cause problems when it comes to various aspects of the scheme. One of the problems relates to the purchase of additional pension. Additional pension involves handing over a large sum of money in return for a promise that you'll be paid more when you retire. Before 2015, you were allowed to buy additional pension in the final salary scheme arrangements. And after March 2022, you can buy it in the career average scheme arrangements. But you can only buy it as part of the scheme that you're in at the time. And here is the problem. From 2015, teachers illegally placed in the career average scheme would have had to have bought it in the career average scheme. Now, because this is illegal, there's a lot of things that would persuade, well, you didn't know it was illegal at the time, but a lot of people would have said, I'm not sure I want to buy it in the career average scheme. For a start, the career average scheme is thought to be inferior. It has a normal pension age of 67 or 68, the one that matches your state pension age. And that's compared to the old final salary scheme, where you could get it in full at 60 or 65, depending on which scheme you were in. However, whether it was in fact worse isn't the point. The fact is, teachers who were moved into the career average scheme illegally were prevented from buying it in the final salary scheme. And if they decided that was the reason they didn't buy it, then they have the case to go back and say, I would have bought it at the time. As this prevention, as this denial of opportunity has been deemed to be illegal, part of the solution is to allow teachers to go back and buy additional pension from this period as if they had done so at the time. This is called retrospective additional pension. Now, there are some rules. You can only buy this if you were denied the opportunity to do so illegally. You have to have transitional protection, and that will be clearly shown on your statement. So it's in your pension scheme before the changes were announced, that's before March 2012. You also have to have been in the scheme to have been able to buy it. So you have to have been teaching between 2015 and 2022. And you would have had to have been moved into the career average scheme during that period. If you are an older member of staff who was fully protected, you would have been able to buy it in the final salary scheme all the way through this period anyway. So if you're younger, then you were moved on the 1st of April 2015. But if you were that kind of in between, what we call the tapered members, where you moved from the final salary into the career average in, say, 2017 or 2018, you can't go back and say, I would have bought it in 2016, because you could have done at the time. So that's the trickiest part, is being able to show that you would have bought it at the time and that you were only dissuaded from buying it because it was no longer available in the final salary scheme. But if you have all of those conditions, then you can apply to buy it. So that's it, you can apply to buy it, but is it good value? Buying additional pension involves that handing over a large sum of money in return for the promise that it will pay out small but regular index-linked amounts in the future. Now, if you live for only 1 year, then clearly you won't have got very much good value for money. But of course, if you're planning on retirement and you're planning for a long term, and remember, the average age for a teacher is into their early 80s, which means it should pay out over 20 of these small but regular and index-linked payments. So that's what you're getting, but how much is it going to cost you? Well, this is a little tricky because the administrators of the pension scheme have removed the calculator for this final salary scheme. I did complain to the DFE, and the DFE have sent me the factors that they use to work out the amounts, and I've put these into a Google spreadsheet that I will post a link to in the description of the video. But at the moment, this is just for the final salary scheme up to the pension age of 60. I haven't done one for the age of 65. That's quite a small group of people, so I haven't spent some time. Sorry if that's you. But you should get an idea, because relatively the costs are very similar. Now, this is the sheet. Now, hold on. Don't get worried by this sheet. It isn't as nasty as it looks. And I know a lot of people are worried about numbers. For a start, if you make a copy of it, go File, make a copy from Google Sheets, then the only cells you need to put in are the white ones. So you have your date of birth and how many blocks of additional pension you want to buy. You have to buy it in blocks of £250. So 1 block, 250, 2 blocks, 500, etc. And that's why it asks you how many blocks that you want. The only other cell you have to enter, or you might like to enter, is what your income tax was at the time, what you would have been paying back when you would have bought this sometime between 2015 and 2022. You have to do this because the scheme is set up to give you income tax relief based on what you would have been paying at that time. It can't be used to lower your income tax for this year. So if you're in that 40% bracket and you're looking to use some of this year's 40% bracket, then you can't use the buying of additional retrospective pension to offset your tax income for this year. They're going to backdate it to those years where you would have bought it. However, that does mean that if you would have bought this back in 2015 and you were paying 40% income tax on your teaching salary back then, you're going to get the 40% benefit of having bought it back then. So here you see the cost to buy additional pension. It goes up as you get older. In this case, if the teacher bought it in 2015 when they were 41, the cost is around £80 cheaper than if they'd bought it a year later in 2016 when they were 42. Now, there are 2 options for each purchase. That is with or without family benefits. For an extra amount, around about £200 in this case, your partner would get some of this for the rest of their life if you die before them. Just to concentrate on one of these choices, let me get rid of the row that includes family benefits. I think it just makes it a little bit easier to go through and not being too many figures to confuse us on. The cost is made up in 3 steps. These are from the factors the DFE have sent me. The initial costs for buying, in this case, £250 of additional pension, is nearly £3,000. Income tax relief is taken off that. Now, in this case, I've said I'm being taxed at 20%. I wasn't a high income tax earner. So I've taken off 20%. That takes you down to 2,300-ish. And then you've got to pay interest because you would have been paying this back from 2015, 2016, whenever you decide you want to say, well, whenever you would have bought this in the history in the past. You've got to pay some interest on the money that you've paid. Now, that interest is not excessive. We are talking here, 8-9 years, and it's only adding up to sort of 1 and a bit % per year. So it's not an horrendous amount of interest. The interest rate is roughly these. These are very rough figures. It does come from the National Savings Investment, and it can be worked out, and they do work it out. but I've just done a very rough interest. So we get a cost to buy it of around about 2,600. That's if I bought it in 2015. Slightly more expensive if I bought it in 2016. Remember, as you get older, the costs go up. So, 2015, you're a year younger, so it is a little bit cheaper, even taking into account the interest. So let's just concentrate on one of these choices. I've got that. We've got this cost of just over 2,600 to buy £250. You may think that's what it costs to buy £250 of additional pension. And you're right, but you're also wrong. You've handed over 2,632, and the £250 you have bought from that, in this example where I'm doing it from 2015, is the value of that £250 that you've bought in 2015. Now, just in the same way that you have been charged interest on the money you would have bought since 2015, this £250 is going to get the benefit of inflation added to it. If we add inflation onto that from 2015 up to April 2024, it's become worth nearly £330. And these, I think, are the important figures to be really comparing, because we're talking about what you're paying out now and what it is worth now. So now, because of interest, you're paying 2,600. What it is worth now is nearly 330. That, I think, is the important figure to compare. And so it's these two figures we can use to tell us how long it would roughly take to get us back the value of your investment. It will take roughly 10 years to get back the investment's value, allowing for income tax. That £330 is going to be taxed at 20% if you're over the personal allowance. So it's going to take about 10 years to get that money back. Taken at 60, that would mean you would have your money back by 70. And remember, average life expectancy, 83, 84. You should get back more than double what you paid in if you live to an average life span of 80, 83, 84. So that is essentially, 23 or 24 lots of that annual £330 amount. And as such, it's going to turn it's going to turn your 2,500 into just over £6,000 after tax. All of which is index linked. And that we are talking about means it's the same value. You're not going to get £6,000 back. You're going to get far more than 6,000, because every year that 330 is going to increase by inflation again and again and again for the next 20 years or rest of your life. Yeah, I'm sorry, if you're going to die before 70, you probably won't get your money back. But if you live beyond that, there's a very good chance you'll get the value of what you've paid in. So how does this compare with the current option to buy additional pension? To buy if you went and bought it in the current scheme, the career average scheme. Well, to find out how much, we can use the flexibility calculator on the TPS website. Now, using the same date of birth, of course, means you are 9 years older than if you were to buy it retrospectively as 2015. So instantly we can see it's going to be more expensive because of that. And here the calculation, the cost to buy £250 now is 3,600. So it's costing an extra £1,000 and you're only getting 250. Remember that 250 from 2015 has gone up to 330. So we've got a cost here that straight away you can see that buying retrospective, to my completely amateur and mathematical mind, not a financial advisor, my opinion, looks like it's £1,000 more for a lot less. Now, you can't buy £330 in today's career average. You've got to buy it in those blocks of 250 still. But if we pro rata that, if we work out what it would cost to buy us £330, it's going up to nearly £5,000. That is significant. But we're not finished here. We're not quite finished yet. Because this career average extra pension can only be accessed in full if you wait until your state pension age to take it. So I've got 67 here as my state pension age. So I can't get my hands on that £330 from the career average until I reach 67. Whereas for the final salary scheme, I can get that 7 years earlier. Now, if I want to take both at 60, I'm going to apply a reduction of 7 years to that career average amount. And if I work that out, it means I've got to buy £471 worth of career average additional pension. The cost of that is £6,800. And here is when I like to try and say I'm comparing apples with apples. £470 in the career average scheme is equivalent at 60 to £330. And so therefore I'm comparing the cost of getting the same amount of additional pension. It means I'm going to pay, if I want to get the same amount I can buy from 2015, I've got to now pay £6,800 compared to paying £2,600. I don't think you need to be a financial advisor. You certainly don't need to be a financial advisor to say there's a significant difference in those amounts of money. So in conclusion, if you want to buy £330 of extra pension, then buying it as retrospective additional pension from 2015 will cost you well under half what it would cost to buy now from the career average scheme. So although I cannot give you financial advice, take these numbers to a proper financial advisor and I'm pretty sure they'll tell you that one of these is better value than the other. But there are some other points to consider. When the first applications were made for this, the administrators told everyone that it would only be possible to buy it using a lump sum payment. Well, a number of us complained about this, and as this is not the position you would have been in if you'd been buying it originally back in 2015. Remember, the whole point of this is that you would put off buying it back then because of the change. And if you decided back in 2015, 2016 to buy it then, you could have opted to buy it over any number of years up to your state pension age. And this is an area to look at. We made some complaints to, well, I say we, a number of people made complaints to the administrations, and they were rejected. And so that was taking a little bit further up to the DFE, who can direct the TPS to do this differently. And the DFE did come back and they said to the teachers' pension scheme, you've got to allow people to pay monthly. So the TPS will allow a request to pay monthly, but the form that you have to fill in doesn't mention this option. I'm not surprised because the form came out before the complaints were made and they changed it, and they've not gone back and changed it. What they're saying is that you have to include a letter with your application form asking for this, that you want to pay for it over a number of years and you want to pay monthly. So if you want to pay monthly because that's what you would have done and it's what you can afford to do now, then you need to include a letter saying how many years that you want to pay it over. Paying monthly generally does cost more in total, but that really is just to reflect inflation and interest on the fact you're buying something at the start and you're paying for it over a long period of time. However, there's one big issue that I'm going to cover shortly. The big issue is that the cost for buying additional pension changes every few years. It means we have this one set of factors from buying from 2015, and then they changed in April 2019, and it changed and became more expensive again in 2024, not shown here. Now, we don't have the figures for buying it as a lump sum now because you can no longer buy it as a lump sum now. But looking at the monthly cost, the costs have gone up by around about 20% or more, and that's a significant increase. And this is important. Well, it's important if you're asking to pay it monthly and you're going to spread the cost out over a number of years, because if your years cover these changes, then the cost will go up at that point. For example, if you ask to buy some additional pension over a 15-year period from, say, April 2016, then we can say that the first 3 years of that are likely to be at the lower cost rate from the 2015 set of factors. And then, because you're asking for 15 years, you're going to have a 5-year period to 2019. We're in this sort of middle range rate. And that still leaves 7 years for you to be paying it at what is the current and most expensive rate. So, for example, if you ask to buy it over a number of years, you need to be taking into account the fact that the cost could well go up throughout that period of time. And then final thoughts. Whilst buying it as early as possible appears to be the best value, you do need to be aware that you can only buy retrospective additional pension if you would have done so at the time. You can only do this. This is only available because you were illegally prevented from doing it at the time, because you were moved into that career average scheme. So you very well may be asked to explain why you didn't buy it at the time. And talking about the reasons that you thought the career average scheme was worse, it had a later pension date, etc. But if you do pick a date like the 1st of April 2015, if I was running this scheme, I'd come back to you and say, hang on a minute, why didn't you buy it the day before? Because the day before, the 31st of March 2015, you would have been able to buy it. So you've got to bear in mind that you really you can't apply for this unless you were denied the opportunity at the time and you decided at that point. It may well be that you had an inheritance come to you in May 2015 and you decided, I could boost my pension, or something else happened that changed your circumstances. You suddenly decide to take a more interest in retirement. Also, if your birthday was before October 1964, remember in 2015 and possibly 2016 and later, you would still have been in the final salary scheme. So you need to make sure that it was this point in time where you weren't allowed to buy it. If you transitioned in 2017, they're going to turn down an application to buy it in 2016 because, of course, you would have been able to buy it at that time if you were born before October 1964. And whilst I'm talking about birthdays, it's worth noting that the older you are, the more expensive it gets, that your age is measured in whole years for this calculation. So if you choose to, you've opened all your presents and you've got lots of birthday money and you think, I'll invest it in a pension. If you actually invest it on the day of your birthday, you are going to be taken as being a whole year older than if you bought it the day before your birthday. So, bear in mind, if your birthday is on the 15th of a month, if you're asked to buy it on the 15th of that month, you're going to be taken a year older than if you bought it on the 14th, say. And finally, there is a deadline for making an application. If you have been sent your remediable service statement, the RSF, you've been sent your RSS, then you have 6 months from the date of getting that to make an application for this. However, if you are retiring and you get the RSS and you make your choice of whether you want to have the final salary or career average scheme for your pension, once you've made that choice, you lose this. The deadline is cut short. So you've got to make the choice you've got to make the application to buy retrospective additional pension before you choose which of your pension schemes you're going to have. Okay. I hope that makes it clear, but please pop any questions in the comments. Bearing in mind, I can't tell you if this is a good deal or not. I'm not an advisor. I can't tell you to do this or not. But it gives you the information now for you able to take to a proper financial advisor to give them some help in helping understand how the scheme works and what retrospective additional pension is all about.